Hey up, and welcome to a very special episode 2 of By George From Page to Stage. Now, I don't know much about today's episode, do I, Rich? All I know is that we're taking a deep dive into one of the main songs, Yorkshire Born and Bred, which is something I'm not. So take it away.
Oh, well, let's address the first thing. You saying A up does not work. You can't. You're not from this part, lad. Hey, dear.
11 years.
Oh, well, fair enough. We'll adopt you. The point about the podcast is how a musical came to fruition and how it developed. And one of the first songs that people hear in this musical is a song called Yorkshire Born and Bred. I was against putting this song in. The musical advisor, Rob Durkin, came to me and said, no, this song does not belong in this musical.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're coming at this from a very odd angle in that this is a song that not many people actually want in this musical, apart from everyone in Yorkshire who's ever heard this song. It sets the stage for the whole thing, and I'm actually a big fan of it, of the song. It's just where it fits within the musical. I've now managed to layer it within the rest of the musical to justify it being there, rather than just to stand and sing. So this is a weird one. It also really charts the course of the musical from where it started. I started writing this maybe 25, 26 years ago, and it didn't start out as By George. There wasn't a character called George in it to begin with.
Yeah.
It was called Wibbits. And I was determined it was going to be set in a chip shop, and I had no idea what that musical was going to be. But yeah, this was called Wibbits. Now, you know what that means? Translate it for our southern fellows.
When he originally said Wibbits to me, I pictured Wibbets. But what I've now figured out is that he means with bits.
Yeah. W-I apostrophe, possessive apostrophe. No, it's not. It's just an apostrophe. Bits. Yeah, it couldn't be called Wibbits because I do want this to travel outside Huddersfield, and it's only Huddersfield that seems to understand Wibbits. So when you order fish and chips, the scraps of I can't believe I'm explaining what bits are.
A lot of people outside Yorkshire don't know what bits are.
Okay, well,
I think where we're from, we call it scraps.
Do you call them scraps?
I think we call them scraps.
Okay, well, some call them scraps. I've no idea what everyone else calls them, but they are the bits of batter that get fried and get taken off the fish as you fry.
It's just wastage that's just otherwise going to go in the bin.
Absolutely, but if you've never ever tried, what you must do is order fish and chips Wibbits.
An absolute lash salt
vinegar.
vinegar.
Salt, vinegar, the lot, and have it.
Every episode I just want fish and chips.
Yeah, if you think how I feel. I've been writing this musical 20 years.
We have to have fish and chips one episode.
Yes.
I'm stipulating that in my contract that I definitely don't have.
We will order them and we'll eat them live. Excellent. So Wibbits, that's how the musical started. Where it went from there was that it took a really political route, because during this 20-year period, of course, we've had Brexit. We've had a real political upheaval in the country, and that always filters into your writing. If you're writing from an honest point of view, you have to reflect what's happening. It's got to be relevant to society. And so Brexit formed a pillar of what the musical eventually became. It isn't that anymore. We're kind of through Brexit. Nobody wants to know about Brexit. Everyone's over Brexit. So we've landed on Yorkshire Born and Bred, which is the first song in By George. I'm not going to play it for you to begin with. You've heard this because I sung it live at a concert that we performed at a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, Greenhead Masonic Hall with Hunley Ladies Choir. Shout out to those ladies.
Yes, they were tremendous, and a really good time was had by all.
Yeah.
But it's the first time really I've played that song live. And you felt it was well received in the room, wasn't it?
It was absolutely well received. I mean, there was a few of us as soloists who were all sat there together from Woodhouse Musical Theatre Company. Then there was obviously the Hunley Ladies Choir, and a room full of people who I think personally could relate to that song on a level that probably people my generation wouldn't have related to as well. And I think the reason why it went down as well as it did is because there will have been people in that room who were from all of the different regions in Yorkshire that you mentioned in the lyrics.
There was a French lady there, and I expected her to come up to me and say, "What the hell was that about?" And she said, "No, I've been in Yorkshire a year, and I understood it." And it was a real badge of honour for her that she actually understood the words.
Yeah.
Because they are, I mean, basically, when I set out to write Yorkshire Born and Bred, I got every single Yorkshire-ism I could think of, wrote it down in a long list and grouped it all together.
Yeah.
And put those into verses, right? Where are the rhymes? Where do I have to force a rhyme? What's going to happen here? And you work out what the rhyme scheme is because of that. But that's not how it started. So let's go back to the beginning and let's tell you about a song called Wibbits. Because originally the musical was called Wibbits. It needs a song called Wibbits to establish what the hell we're talking about. And I wrote a song. I'm going to put you on the spot now. Can you try and think up 3 rhymes for bits?
Sits.
Yeah. You can go rude if you want.
Pits.
Yeah.
Fits.
Yeah.
Well, we know the 4th one is, don't we?
You've been working your way through the alphabet.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Ritz in there as well. There are a few, but they don't... The problem I found with the song was that I'd created too many rhyming pitfalls. Every other syllable had to rhyme, and it was a dog to write. So, I'm going to read you something I'm really embarrassed about now, which was my first version of Wibbits. It goes, dear Lord, if potatoes are appealing, maybe grease is the word. If you're going in for glamour and glitz, then get a little extra and say yes to the world and apportion every portion with bits. It makes no sense.
Oh, no, that does make sense to me.
Okay, it doesn't explain
Depends
anything.
how fast you sing it.
It does, and it was rattling through. It's a real patter song. Okay, let's leave that one behind. It had a lovely riff to it. It sounded lovely. It was a kind of gospel song. Very nice. Thank you very much, but you'll never hear it again.
I think, though, what I've taken from that is that you've clearly used inspiration. I mean, the first line, "grease is the word." I mean, obviously that's very well known as being the tagline from Grease, the musical. And then "greasy's the word" is the one that you've developed for By George,
course.
isn't it?
Yeah, it was a natural pun.
There was some, like you said in the preview episode, there was some recycling of music throughout
Absolutely.
this whole period.
And there's wordplay in that verse. Oh, it's sparkling. Potatoes are appealing. Fine, great, lovely. But it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't set up any musical. If that's your opening to the musical, people are thinking, oh, get on with it. What the hell is
fish and chip wrap.
What a waste of space. Yeah, it's a fish and chip wrap. Oh, no, thank you. And fish and chips are well wrapped anyway. So it moved from that to a real rest. I took a hiatus from the musical totally and went on a cruise ship and worked on a cruise ship for many, many years. And again, you might feel the same. I have a limited amount of creativity to my day. If I'm feeling creative, then I can do something creative. But if I'm not feeling creative, forget it. And often creativity has a finite amount for me. So if I'm working on a cruise ship and I'm putting a lot of effort into doing the shows there and being creative with games and things like that, I was a cruise director, so that's all I effectively did. It saps your creativity and you're channeling it towards the ship rather than to what I wanted to channel it into, which was my musical. And so when I gave up the ships, I was able to come back and do that. It was legitimately why I stopped doing any work on ships at all. I retired when I was 42 in order to come back and actually do some writing. Because I knew I didn't have the creative juices left. And I was worried that I'd lose them forever. It's so precarious because I dream a lot of my songs. A lot of them come to me during the night. I'll wake up and I'll have, instead of a dream diary, I'll come up and there'll always be a song waiting for me in the morning. Wow. But you worry that always isn't going to happen. And what happens? A
finite amount.
You found out I was waking up on the ships going, well, is there another song in me?
Yeah.
Thinking, so I had to recharge the creative juices, get off the ships, and come back and write something else. So my next attempt at the opening number of the song was a song for George. George, as we discussed in previous podcasts, is a very quite dour, stereotypical Yorkshireman. And one thing that I had him down as was being quite miserly with his money and incredibly frugal to a fault. And so I wrote a song for him called "The Best Things in Life Are Free," and that was supposed to tie in to bits, because nobody charges for bits. You just ask for bits, and Absolutely, they come as that lovely little extra that you get. And so my concept was the best things in life are free. And I'm going to now play you something again I'm deeply ashamed about, but I'm going to play you a verse from The Best Things in Life Are Free.
Which is cut from...
You'll never ever hear this song ever, apart from in this podcast. This
is an exclusive to the podcast.
Yeah, let's not build it up too much, but this is The Best Things in Life Are Free. Go for it. Things in life are free. For me, the best things in life are free. They all, what all I hear you call. Well, overall and after all, they say the way to taste success is to struggle and to strain for the smallest little gain. If you broadband half your life away, then all you'll get is stress. They all, what all I hear you call. Well, overall and after all, if you want to climb that tree, when you rise you have to fall. So I'm saying to you all, the best things in life are free. As you mark your days, there are certain ways to lift your spirits higher. But do less than what you can, or you're leaping from the pan and straight into the deep fat fryer. I'm saying what's it matter, it won't get you that much fatter. It's a heavens to Jiminy, right of your chimney, rollicking, frolicking, bitty, you battering, digger the dump, it's a buying, it dump, it's a batter, crispy batter. Yes, the best things in life are free. To me, the best things in life are free. Thoughts?
Straight in, one word question. So I can see where there's some kind of inspiration that you've taken into the songs that you've...
But you can see the problem with the song.
I think musically that there are similarities to what you're doing with the newer songs that are actually in the finished production. But yeah, I think I can see what you mean in that it's very wordy, it's very difficult to try and get all of the puns that you're trying to get out of it. And I think that musically you can really sense that it needed to evolve a bit more.
Lord, yes. It's there are some clever bits in it. There are some nice lyrics in it. But I've kind of rotated them so they're in a different song now.
Yeah.
George doesn't really sing Yorkshire Born and Bred anymore. It's more a company number. So I've taken it, all of those words from one person just got endless. You only heard one verse there. There are 3 verses of that nonsense. And it took an age to write. And it wasn't enjoyable. And it wasn't enjoyable to sing. And so, whereas there are ideas you can use for the next song, it had to go. And scrap it we did with great abandon. I said, no, out, absolutely. Let's write another one. And we did.
I think that leads us into a really good question then, because as you said, it took ages to write, and that's not even going to be in the musical that everybody's going to go and see.
Every song that I poured over for months isn't in the show. It isn't. The best ones I always write are the ones straight from when I wake up, straight down. The ones I've written in 15 minutes are far better than the ones I've absolutely ached over for months.
Would you say that that's like a standard convention? Is that something that's happened throughout the production process of this show, of other shows, that you found that your songs that come, I guess, not fully formed, but quite fleshed out from when you wake up, which... Quite coincidental. Maybe you should have just spent more time asleep rather than finishing the cruise ship
Let's
series.
try that.
More sleep, more creativity. It could catch on, that idea, couldn't it? But
what's that thing? There's a saying that the camel is the horse that's been created by committee. You know that?
I've never heard that.
Okay, well, before. A horse, this perfect beast.
Yeah.
And there's a camel. And the camel is what a committee would have come up with if they'd been asked to create a horse. So it's got fat reserve. That's exactly what we need. It's got a place for people to sit. You know, you get in the bit in between the humps.
Yeah.
Great. That's a committee. But a camel looks ludicrous. And that's effectively what I've created with that. you end up taking bits apart and pouring over it, adding chords where they don't need to be. And so that's the committee version of what...
so it was a bit busier and it had a bit too much about it.
Too much
and then what
going
you've
on.
taken is stripped it right back and gone,
But also,
what am I trying to say?
it didn't further the story.
Yeah.
So what? The best things in life are free. You could say all that within a line of dialogue. And to be fair, George does within the show now.
And like he said as well, in terms of advancing the story, in the last episode, the auditions episode, which if you haven't watched or listened to, I would advise to go and listen to that first, because you'll learn a lot more about the songs and a lot more about why we're talking about this one in particular. But you said in that episode that, a common convention in musicals is that the plot is driven by the dialogue, the actors doing the actual lines, and then when you get to
an emotional beat,
when you get to a piece of music and a song, it's almost like a break from the action, and it's effectively a kind of self-contained little musical splurge of emotion, rather than necessarily advancing the story. So in Yorkshire Born and Bred, the evolving Wibbits from just a song that George was singing into a company number that comes early on in the show.
First thing you hear.
First thing in the show, in fact. What's that doing that Wibbits couldn't do?
It is setting a place. You are actually in a position. You are saying, we are now in Yorkshire. Welcome to Yorkshire. And that has a knock-on effect of it immediately establishing the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Because there are Yorkshire stereotypes, and here they are, ready for you, ready to play for your pleasure.
And they're literally queuing up.
They are. They're ready for you.
Yeah.
It sets it in a time and place, which is something that a song like Wibbits and The Best Things in Life Are Free never can, because it's putting forward a character trait. The Best Things in Life Are Free is a line in by George now. And it's just one line that leads to a payoff. Someone has taken a chip fork, and George has a nice speech about no, we do not charge for such things, and is the salt and pepper free? Yes, of course the salt and pepper's free. You can have as many condiments as you desire, because the best things in life are free. And then he says that'll be 10p for the chip fork. So there's a payoff, there's a punchline, and that gets far more over in terms of a character than that whole song.
Yeah.
So that song went. So what do you replace it with? You replace it with the Yorkshire Born and Bred. And it had real pretension to it.
Right.
So there are pretensions to Yorkshire being to England what England was to Europe when we came to the Brexit vote. Oh, that got very murky very quickly.
Yeah.
But that's what the original musical was about, and how someone's fervour towards their county was what we were feeling as Englanders and Britain towards Europe. There was a hostility to outsiders built within a national conversation, and that's essentially what I was trying to parallel. Well, that got very political very quickly, and I'm going to read you one of the verses from the original Yorkshire Born and Bred, which is said by George. You'll note and attest to this, that it's got lines through it.
A lot of lines through
it. A lot of lines through it, but this way. So George has a sort of a bit in the middle of Yorkshire Born and Bred, which when the action stops and he says, "But the view from my chip shop is maddening, because the youth of my Yorkshire is saddening. It were all right before, but it's not what it were, and changes a sweep in our land." And then that's undercut by Pauline, who says, well, we may not be politically correct yet, but from job seekers down to the jet set, you'll be far less alone, just don't say Bath or Scone, and I dare say we'll make you feel grand. So it undercuts it immediately. You've got a little political point, and then that's gone. This one labours it for another 3 verses. And he says, generations of us throughout history would just look on with befuddled mystery. All those gay pride parades, hair tattoos, ducks and braids. But for now, it's just smoking they've banned. Meanwhile, far from that broad isolation, there's a Yorkshire embracing a nation. It's not perfectly shared, but there's less running scared. Every face gets a place up our street. Right, okay, political soapbox, get off it. But you can see why that I just had to take all those out. It doesn't belong in a jaunty, light-hearted musical, which is what I wanted George to become.
Did you feel then that you've kind of touched on Brexit a couple of times in this episode, and obviously with you writing the musical originally in your 20s, so a few years ago, times have shifted on since then, and I know that you've said every time you've revisited it, you've tried to bring it so that it still has very much got its place in its roots, which was your experience of a fish and chip shop when you were growing up, which is almost timeless in a way. But it sounds like what's happened is, as you've redrafted it once you've retired from cruise directing and you're very much setting it in the here and now, you wanted to steer it away from that political period, because I guess that really cements when it's taking place, and is the point moving forwards that, obviously the first production that'll be happening is in September this year in 2023, but is the thinking that by solidifying it as a Yorkshire musical that is set in modern times, and by steering away from the political edge, it doesn't really matter when this production happens. In the future, it can carry on. It can stay as exactly what it is, which is a semi-dysfunctional family. Well, let's call them what they are. A dysfunctional family that is a feel-good musical comedy set very much in Yorkshire. It doesn't have to feel dated as such.
No, that's right. And it can still be relevant. You can still have a certain edge to it. But really, if it was going to be a political musical, it would be an entirely different animal.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I think political musicals don't necessarily exist. Musicals take a long time to come to fruition. They take a long time to write, take a long time to perform. Political plays, you can write on the night, and you can pretty much satire.
You can just improv.
You can improv, and a lot of people do. You look at SNL over in America, and there is a satirical edge to that every single week. That's not the turnaround for musicals. So I'm not going to say that it's less political. I believe there's still a political undertone to By George. It takes pot shots wherever, but that's all they are. It's not all-out war. It's just pot shots at things like social media, about nationalism, and all those themes are still in it, but the edges are somewhat smoothed. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. I think that, as you say, in fitting with George's character and also Marge's character as well, you kind of her whole her whole thing about being a social media troll and kind of being addicted to that platform is a play on the fact that, or a commentary on the fact that there are people like that.
Of course.
Especially when, growing up, obviously myself, 10, 15, don't want to say anymore.
Don't say anymore. Yes.
That's when social media was first coming out, and when kids my age at the time embraced it, there was almost that you saw text speak, and you saw things coming out that made people feel like they were shifting their identities so they could create these separate communities and really have individualism. Then when you saw the adults coming onto the social platforms, then there was a shift again, and you could see different ideas about how to use it come out.
Yeah.
And I think what you touched on before as well about wanting to have a bit of political edge in there, but rounding it off and making it so it's pot shots. The big thing for me there is that you mentioned the idea of countyism or regionalism. And I would say, in my experience living in Yorkshire, every single Yorkshire person would, when they say, "Oh, where are you from?" would always say that they are Yorkshire. Yeah. First and foremost, before they identify that they are British.
Yorkshire, English, British,
definitely.
European.
Yeah.
You're getting further away from what people immediately identify.
Yeah, exactly.
Very strange. But you're right, it's that sense of identity. And that comes into the ideas of agency within the piece as well.
Yeah.
You know who you are, therefore you know who you want to be. It's odd. Because all these themes have become increasingly relevant with people like Trump coming into power, and that comes into the conversation as well, because you have someone who's a social media troll, and that's essentially becomes the most powerful person in the world. What a horrendous thing to have happened for our society, and yet that's echoed within By George. But again, it's a musical. You are not thinking about Donald Trump or Brexit when you're listening to this musical. I hope there are themes that happen towards the end that sort of trigger you when you leave and you think, oh yeah, it might have been about that.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a musical. I want you to have a good time watching this.
And like you mentioned, in the preview episode, when that whole process was happening, that also, alongside Brexit, the US candidacy, kind of the Trump versus Clinton, that really fed into the way you were writing the whole musical, really, wasn't it? It
was. And as you can see, through a song like Yorkshire Born and Bred, you can see how the musical's evolved. And what becomes relevant 20 years ago is no longer relevant now.
Yeah.
I think everything has to have that. Even musicals that have been performed, musicals that have been extensively rewritten as they've gone through their life. A musical called Witches of Eastwick started with very different songs and a very different outlook, and gradually the songs changed, and as the musical was running, and it became a different animal at the end. It became far more obsessed with gender politics. I don't know how it is at the moment. It's not being performed that much.
For a while, has it?
No, so it's interesting to see how evolution's happened, and I expect that to happen with George as well.
Yeah.
But perhaps I've kind of future-proofed it because I've taken those edges off it. Yeah.
So my question that comes out of this then is, obviously originally you had Whippets being the main song and also the title of the musical itself.
Yeah.
So what was the reason for not transferring Yorkshire Born and Bred to being the name of the musical? I mean, we touched on why we call it By George in the preview episode, but here I think is a good opportunity to readdress that, especially when you'd finished Yorkshire Born and Bred as a song.
If I call a musical Yorkshire Born and Bred, it is not going to sell outside Yorkshire. And I do believe that it has a tale to tell even outside the restraints of Yorkshire. So having a musical set in Yorkshire is fine. Take a musical like Calendar Girls. That's got the first song is called Yorkshire, but you associate it first with Calendar Girls, not Yorkshire. So it can be set in Yorkshire and yet not be limited to being performed in Yorkshire. I hope. I cannot wait to hear people from southern counties feigning a Yorkshire accent to try and do this show. It'd be extraordinary.
I mean, there might be some.
I really hope they do
the show. Yeah.
Oh Lord, yes, perfecting each dialogue anachronism. I can't wait. Can't wait.
I mean, my impression earlier. I'm not southern, but I think
you got away with it.
I could probably do it. I mean, I could probably manage it, just about. But yeah, I'd love to see a Londoner do it.
So, well, let's hear the song then. Let's finish the podcast here. We can listen to Yorkshire Born and Bred, and now you know a little bit more about the genesis of it and how it's evolved. It might take on a different meaning for you, but I doubt it. I think it's just a good, fun song.
I agree.
So here it is, folks. Yorkshire Born and Bred. Now welcome to Yorkshire, wherever you've come from. There's more to this county than to Ernie by gum. The man who fought off slavery's our William Wilberforce. But sad to say, success eluded Yorkshire's own Guy Fawkes. From Redcar to Sheffield, from Huddersfield to Brid, we're proud of our people and most of what they did. So grow white roses and you won't see red. If we're stubborn then Oz, it is certainly 'cause we are Yorkshire born and bred. Our accents are different wherever you may roam. They always go broader whenever we go home. And if you're just a mardy arse, I'll tell you this for nout. We'll call you a daft apeth and we'll give your lugs a clout. If you're fair to middling, we'll make you feel greatly. Your lunch is your dinner and dinner is your tea. It's not what we're saying, it's the way it's said. So come here, you're laughing, we're none of you faffing. We're Yorkshire born and bred. We're born and bred. We're born and bred. The curry of Bradford's a source of county pride. There's Parkin and Pikelets and Wensleydale on side. But York's to blame for Kit Kats, Polo Mints and Jelly Tots. Type 2 diabetes and a billion acne spots. There's real ale and bitter, or maybe have a brew. We made Marks and Spencers, but that's a do. A large Yorkshire pudding keeps us all well fed. Our lads and our lasses are real Bobby Dazzlers. We're Yorkshire, born and bred. But the view from me window is saddening, 'cause the youth of me Yorkshire is maddening. It were all right before, but it's not what it was. And there's changes a sweeping our land. And we may not be politically correct yet, but from job seekers up to the jet set, you'll be far less alone. Just don't say Bath or Scone, and I dare say we'll make you feel grand. If you're up the Dales or on Ilkley Moor Batat, the Pennines give shelter from wind and rain and that. We savour God's own country and we say, well, I'll be blessed. You never need your coat, but you'll be glad you wore your vest. We've got Arctic monkeys and pups a different class. Our war cry is how much? 'Cause where there's muck, there's brass. We use Hill and Ockney, we can heal your head. From Priestley to April, from Drabble to Bronte, from Bennett to Warden, we've got the full Monty. Pull up your stump and cheer by a give up, 'cause we're Yorkshire, born and bred. By George, we're Yorkshire, born and bred. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, and Matt and I will be back next time.
Cheers, Rich.
Thanks, Matt.